Hello, everyone. This is the 32-team NFL franchise of the 2007-2008 season. Here we are in the off-season. As you can see, the first 8 picks of the 2008 NFL Draft, the Arizona Cardinals select Jake Long, the offensive tackle from Michigan. There's a lot of debate whether they would take Matt Ryan, but in the end, they decided that they want to go with Matt Leinart to start this next season, their number 3 overall pick back in 2006, and thought that having an anchor left tackle would be the best way to go, very similarly to the Miami Dolphins in 2008, passing on Matt Ryan as well, going for Jake Long. The Kansas City Chiefs were impressed with Brody Croyley, and so passed on Matt Ryan also. With Tommy Halley, they wanted to pair him with Chris Long, the defensive end from Virginia. So I'm looking forward to seeing how the Kansas City defense plays with Chris Long and Tamba Hali. At number 3, the Atlanta Falcons end up getting their QB just like in real life, getting Matt Ryan from Boston College. Looking forward to a lot of dynamic plays from him and Roddy White. A team that was very dull have just gained a spark. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Derek Harvey. At this point, in the top 4, they wanted to get a solid defender, and they ended up going with Derek Harvey, a good pass rusher from Florida. The Houston Texans needed a spark other than Andre Johnson on their offense, and who better than going with Darren McFadden, the running back from Arkansas. The Miami Dolphins, who originally had the number 1 overall pick in the real draft, ended up going 6th overall and decided to take Glenn Dorsey from LSU, the big man on the defensive front. Wanted to buff up their defense, especially against the New England Patriots in their division. Getting some more core defensive help is important. The Detroit Lions, who were originally one of the worst teams in the league, about halfway, 3/4 of the way through the season, the Lions were on track for the number 1 overall pick and were likely destined to pick Matt Ryan. However, since they are now at the 7th pick, they ended up going with Gerard Mayo to help their defense, the linebacker from Tennessee. The Bills, picking at number 8, are now going with Keith Rivers, the linebacker from USC. Moving on to the 9th pick, we see Vernon Gholston, the defensive end from Ohio State, falling to Jacksonville to get their pass rush a little bit better, to go up against teams like the Colts, the Texans, and the Titans. We look to see a lot of good big plays from Gholston. Pittsburgh picking oddly low than they normally do at number 10, largely due to Ben Roethlisberger being out the majority of the season. End up going to pick Chris Williams, the right tackle from Vanderbilt. They see that as an improvement to Max Starks. Cincinnati Bengals, division rival, picking right afterwards, draft Cedric Ellis, the defensive tackle of USC, trying to buff up their defensive line and their interior run defense. The St. Louis Rams end up going with Lawrence Jackson, the defensive end from USC, who drops into their lap. They believe that he will be a great pass rusher in a very competitive NFC West division. Panthers, needing help on defense in their secondary, decide to pick the best safety on the board, Kenny Phillips, 6'2", 212 out of Miami. The Green Bay Packers have a lot of solid players all around their team with the departure of Brett Favre. They're now with Aaron Rodgers. They have Al Woods and Charles Woodson. And both of those two players, Al Harris and Charles Woodson. So they wanted to get a cornerback who is not in their 30s. So Leotis McKelvin from Troy ends up being the pick for the Green Bay Packers. Kentwan Balmer, the defensive tackle, slips to the 15th pick. And here's where a trade occurred. The Seattle Seahawks decided to trade away their number 1 overall, their first round pick, the 15th pick, to the Jacksonville Jaguars for Marcus Stroud. So the Jacksonville Jaguars decided to get rid of one of their top defensive players to then get a first round pick as well as a couple other picks later on in this draft and next year. So Kentwan Balmer replaces Stroud on the defensive front for Jacksonville. The 49ers get the 16th overall pick, which originally was from the Indianapolis Colts. And they pick Rashard Mendenhall, the running back of Illinois, because they know that when Frank Gore went down, their rushing attack suffered. So they wanted to make sure they got a spark plug that can come in if and when Frank Gore becomes injured. As for the 17th overall pick, we see the New York Giants also selecting a running back, Jonathan Stewart. Now, we know that he originally was drafted by the Carolina Panthers. However, the Panthers ended up going with a safety, and the Giants eventually got Jonathan Stewart later on. But in this draft, there was Brandon Jacobs and Ahmad Bradshaw, but they wanted to get more of a spark plug to help out Eli Manning and that Giants offense. The Washington Redskins did not want to pass up on a defensive stud like Philip Merling, the defensive end of Clemson. So they went ahead to go get that pass rusher. The Jets go with an original pick, Dustin Keller, tight end of Purdue. They want to give Chad Pennington some more options as a receiver. Their tight ends were not as strong, so they wanted to buff up that position there. Next was the originally Cleveland Browns pick, but it went to Dallas in the Brady Quinn trade back in 2007. And here the Dallas Cowboys select Ryan Clady, the tackle of Boise State, to help shore up that offensive line to help Tony Romo with some protection. The Tennessee Titans go ahead with Chris Johnson, the running back from East Carolina. And that was an original pick and one that seems to be a very good one. He'll be a very explosive running back and give a lot more of an explosive option for their offense. The Minnesota Vikings were led by Tavares Jackson, and they picked up Brett Favre here in the offseason, and they picked up Donald Driver, they picked up Michael Clayton, and here they picked up Gosder Chirilis, the Boston College offensive tackle, to help protect Brett Favre, at least for this year, and whoever they end up getting in the future drafts. As we know, Brett Favre's time is limited. The Denver Broncos at 23 going with Dwayne Brown, getting more pass protection help for Jay Cutler. He's the offensive tackle of Virginia Tech. At number 24, Joe Flacco, the QB of Delaware, standing 6'6", originally went to the Baltimore Ravens, but in this reality ended up going to Chicago. Because again, the Ravens performed much better under Steve McNair. The Ravens made no move to trade up for him, and it just made sense that the Bears with Rex Grossman and the Bears with Brian Griese were less than stellar. That even though they made the playoffs as the division winner, they still were not a strong team and got beat by the Eagles in the first round handily. So they go with Joe Flacco to give themselves a quarterback of the future. At 25, we see the Dallas Cowboys select Mike Jenkins, cornerback of South Florida. That is an original pick, going to help their secondary. The Baltimore Ravens at 26, with Joe Flacco off the board and with McNair as their solid starter for the near future, they go with Aqib Talib, the defensive back of Kansas, because again, the Ravens do have a lot of solid defensive players, and with Talib still on the board at this point, there's no way they would want to pass on that. Next are the Patriots, and the 27th pick originally belongs to the Patriots. The 28th pick is the 49ers pick that the Patriots had at the beginning of this year. And as you can see, they went with Felix Jones, the running back, 5'10", out of Arkansas, and they did trade Lawrence Maroney away to the Indianapolis Colts. I was very disappointed in Maroney with the Patriots, and so the Patriots wanted to restart with running back, so they pick up Felix Jones. The Colts, who did not have a good second running back behind Joseph Adai, and that caused great frustration for the Colts, ended up having to get a second running back, and they thought Maroney was a good pick. Patriots also pick up Brandon Albert for a right tackle from Virginia to help shore up that offensive line. The Saints, picking at number 29, go with Antoine Cason, the cornerback of Arizona. Here they are with getting some more depth on their defense to help their passing defense. The Raiders at number 30 decide to go defense with Trevor Laws, the 6'1" defensive tackle from Notre Dame. Again, they had a very good season, just one game away, technically one showboat away from the Super Bowl. So here they are, brushing up on their defense just so that they can maybe move into that next tier. Lastly, we have the second to last pick, the San Diego Chargers, and they pick Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie, Antonio Cromartie's, I think it's his brother or half-brother, from cornerback from Tennessee State, to help their defensive backs. And lastly, the Eagles, who originally did not have a first-round pick because they traded out of the first round in the 2008 draft, end up going with Deshaun Jackson, the wide receiver from Cal. And that is the first night of the NFL draft. Where we go from here is we'll break down each of the individual teams' draft now, because we're not going to go over every pick. So first we have the Arizona Cardinals. Again, they went with Jake Long, as well as Curtis Lofton, Tyrell Johnson, Armand Shields, Tim Hightower, Andre Woodson, Demario Presley at defensive tackle. Right there, they were able to help with their defense a little bit in those middle rounds, gave themselves a wide receiver playmaker as an option. As we move on to the Rams, again, they got the stud Lawrence Jackson, Quentin Groves. They went with 2 defensive ends. I think they were really polishing their pass rush in such a competitive division. They went with John Greco, who is an original pick, Josh Johnson, a late round QB, as well as a fullback, Jerome Felton, and then a potential steal, Ryan Mundy at strong safety. As for the Seattle Seahawks, again, they traded away their first round pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars so that they picked up Marcus Stroud and ended up going with Tracy Porter, Brad Cottom, Mike McGlynn, Lavelle Hawkins, Robert James, and then a 6th-round pick, Jalen Parmelli from Toledo. Now here we are with the San Francisco 49ers. Again, their first-round pick went to the Patriots, but they had the Colts first-round pick, which was higher at number 16 with Mendenhall. DeJuan Morgan, safety from North Carolina State. Marcus Smith, Stanford Kegler. Jamar Johnson. So they ended up going with 2 wide receivers. Donald Thomas, the right guard, as well as Irvin Baldwin coming in there at left end from Michigan State. To now expand on another division, we see the New York Giants. Giants selecting Jonathan Stewart. And then Malcolm Kelly, who I believe is going to be a very big prospect here. The 6'4", 224 Oklahoma wide receiver. Yes, there's Terrell Thomas, Kenny Iwabima, Colt Brennan as a quarterback behind Eli Manning, as well as Chester Adams at left guard. Then we look at the Washington Redskins. Again, they were a team that started out extremely strong, but then ended up faltering at the end of the season. They had their pick of Philip Merling, another defensive player, Brandon Flowers, a cornerback, Earl Bennett as a wide receiver, David Hale, and then Chauncey Washington, running back at USC, 6th-round pickup, but one that I believe will be a valuable asset for the Redskins. Next here we have the Eagles. Their original draft wasn't as impressive, but when I looked at who we got with Deshaun Jackson, Marcus Harrison, Barry Richardson as offensive tackle there, maybe draft him a little bit high. A late bloomer with Quentin Demps, a 4th-round pick. Geno Hayes, who ended up being a really solid player in real life, ends up going to the Eagles at 5th. They have the 6th pick from the Cleveland Browns, Mike Hart, the running back from Michigan, Jonathan Goff, and then late, instead of going undrafted, they end up drafting the wide receiver Devon Bess out of Hawaii. The division winner, Dallas Cowboys, ended up getting Ryan Clady and Mike Jenkins, 2 first-round picks, one from Cleveland, one from Dallas. Andre Fluellen, the defensive tackle from Florida State. Andre Caldwell, a 3rd-round wide receiver from Florida. Sean Murphy. I had to make sure they got Orlando Scandrick, the cornerback of Boise State, because that's an original pick, as well as then Andy Studebaker from the right end from Wheaton. As we proceed to more division to go through, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As you saw earlier, they drafted Derek Harvey, the defensive end of Florida, James Hardy, the wide receiver from Indiana. Although they did sign Jake Delhomme as a quarterback in the offseason, they did draft Chad Henne in the 3rd round with the 4th pick, Thomas DeCowd, Cody Wallace, Chevis Jackson to help finish out this draft. Then the Carolina Panthers, who did sign Mark Bulger. And there we have their Kenny Phillips pick, Devin Thomas, a wide receiver, Steve Slayton as a running back. So they weren't able to get Jonathan Stewart because he went to the Giants, but they were able to get Steve Slayton, and that's a good pick for them. Justin King as cornerback, Brian Kuhl, and then Demetrius Bell of Michigan. And of course, the Atlanta Falcons have Matt Ryan at number 3. They went with Sam Baker, the offensive tackle, to help protect Matt Ryan, figuring going with a rookie QB and offensive tackle combo. They had their another second round pick from Houston, which they drafted Kevin Smith, the running back from Central Florida, since Warwick Dunn left and ended up going to the Arizona Cardinals. Jason Jones, the defensive tackle, Derek Fine, tight end, Reggie Corner, the cornerback of Akron, Nick Hayden, DT Wisconsin, and Steve Justice, the center from Wake Forest. And to wrap up the South, we have the New Orleans Saints. Of course, they drafted Antonio Cason in the first round. Craig Stevens, a tight end. Jeremy Zuda, Jason Shirley, Brandon Carr, Kevin Robinson, a wide receiver, and then Larry Grant of Ohio State. Moving in now to the NFC North, we see the Detroit Lions picking Gerard Mayo, and then they went with Brian Brom, the quarterback of Louisville. Now, he originally went to the Green Bay Packers, but it never really became anything and was always kind of a shadow to to Aaron Rodgers. But Brian Brom will get a great chance here in Detroit with John Kitna going to the Houston Texans. Martellus Bennett, a solid tight end pickup here in the second round, as they had their 7th pick going to Brom, 20th pick going to Bennett. Early Doucette, wide receiver LSU. So again, they really were tightening their offense here in the second and 4th round. Corey, I'm not even going to attempt his last name, from Bowling Green. Again, Jacob Hester, fullback, Jack Williams, and then Brandon Keith, left tackle out of Northern Iowa, to help finish out this Detroit Lions team. As for the Green Bay Packers, they went with the cornerback, McKelvin. They went with Jordy Nelson in the second round, the 6'3" wide receiver of Kansas State. Jermichael Finley. So those are 2 in a row of actual picks. They went with William Hayes, defensive end. I figured they should get a pass rusher on this team. Josh Sitton, the left guard from UCF, and that he is a guard. And then you have Matt Flynn. I made sure that they had that pick. So, of course, many of these were actual picks of the Green Bay Packers that I just thought fit with where they were actually as a team in this alternate reality. The Minnesota Vikings went with Goddard Chirilis from Boston College. Drafted Jerome Simpson. I know he was originally picked by the Bengals and then went to the Vikings later on in his career. But here he is now, Jerome Simpson from Coastal Carolina. 3rd round, they went with Kellen Davis, the tight end, because Visanthe Shienko left them for the Seattle Seahawks. So they now replaced him with Kellen Davis, who originally was drafted by the Chicago Bears. Chris Ellis, defensive end, Virginia Tech. Patrick Lee, Alvin Bowen. They did draft Steve Johnson. He from Kentucky. He was an undrafted free agent that went to the Buffalo Bills in real life, but was picked in the 6th round here with the Vikings. And then Thomas Brown, just a running back from Georgia. Here we are with the Chicago Bears, the division winner, going with Joe Flacco, Matt Forte as their top 2 picks. Dan Connor, linebacker, to go be paired up with Brian Urlacher. Chad Reinhardt, left tackle of Northern Iowa. Craig Steltz, safety. Justin Tryon, cornerback from Arizona. Marcus Henry, Joe Mays, finishing out their picks. Now we move to the AFC. We see the 2nd overall pick, the Kansas City Chiefs, going with Chris Long, defensive end of Virginia. Also with Donnie Avery and Jamal Charles, 2 offensive weapons, along with Anthony Collins as offensive tackle from Kansas. Jonathan Wilhite from cornerback of Auburn. Carl Nix, an offensive tackle, which might be moving more inside as a guard. He was originally picked by the Saints, became a solid contributor. So getting him in the 5th round is great for the Chiefs. Tom Santee, tight end. Croy Bierman, right end of Montana. And then Chris Harrington, ending their draft with 2 defensive ends, 2 pass rushers for the Chiefs. As for the Denver Broncos, the 3rd in the AFC West, again, a very strong division. Dwayne Brown and Eddie Royal, and Eddie Royal was a real pick by them. Xavier Adibi as linebacker. B.U. Bell, who was picked by the Browns, but was kind of a disappointment. Roy Schoening, Trey Williams. They did draft Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis, I know the name is typed wrong there, and then King Dunlap, left tackle of Auburn. Moving on now to the Super Bowl, the AFC Championship winner, the Chargers, going with Roger Cromartie, Tom Zbikowski, Frank Oakham as defensive tackle from Texas. We look at Tony Hills from offensive tackle, Xavier Oman, the running back, and then Tyler Schmidt, tight end from San Diego. Big win there. It was pairing Antonio Cromartie with Rogers Cromartie so they can be together. And then the division winner, the Oakland Raiders, had only a couple picks. They only had 4 picks in the entire draft. Went with Trevor Laws, the defensive tackle, Mario Manningham, wide receiver of Michigan, to help give Jamarcus Russell a bigger target. Look at Marcus Howard at right outside linebacker from Georgia, and then ended up with Landon Cohen, defensive tackle of Ohio. Now we see the AFC East with the Miami Dolphins picking Glenn Dorsey, Jeff Otah, Jordan Dizon, Dwight Lowry, cornerback, Marcus Thomas, running back, 5th round pick, Mike Gibson, the right guard from California. And then they drafted Danny Amendola, the wide receiver from Texas Tech, who ended up going to the Patriots later, but here we are. The Miami Dolphins got him in this situation. Now we go into the Bills, who had numerous draft picks, many picks here. So starting off with Keith Rivers, they also wanted to help their quarterback with Mike Pollack, the center, the best center in the draft class. Tashard Choice came off the board here in the 3rd round, and he will be playing behind Marshawn Lynch, who had many injuries last season. So picking up Tashard Choice, he might have a good workload this coming off season. O'Neal Cousins, Josh Morgan, Dre Moore. They did go with a quarterback, Alex Brink, but he's a late round pick, so he may not be as much of the future. Kareem Moore is a strong safety, a good late round pick that could become someone. And then Trevor Scott. I picked him because he was from Buffalo, and I thought, well, he can go play for his hometown team. The New York Jets, they went with Dustin Keller, Sheila Rachal, one of the better offensive guards in this draft. Sean Crable, the defensive end, outside linebacker from Michigan. Keenan Burton, Eric Ainge. I think Ainge was officially drafted by the Jets as well in this draft. DeJuan Tribble, Jeremy Thompson, right end of Wake Forest, and then Owen Schmidt, the fullback from West Virginia, just finished their draft. Now, the New England Patriots, I felt, had a fantastic draft, and they had a lot of draft picks to help do it. So they did have 2 running backs picked. So Felix Jones in the 1st round, followed by Danny Woodhead with the last pick of the draft in the 7th round. They went with Brandon Albert to help with their offensive line, get some youth. And Albert, again, who originally went to the Chiefs in the 1st round, ended up going to the Patriots. Calais Campbell fell to the Patriots in the 2nd round. Defensive end who's 6'8" from Miami. He originally went to the Arizona Cardinals in the real draft. Charles Godfrey and Bruce Davis, some defensive help along with Bo Rudd in the 6th round. They did draft Marcel Reese, who was a fullback in this draft, and John David Booty. Because again, the Patriots originally drafted, I believe it was Kevin O'Connell. So I figured, okay, Kevin O'Connell was off the board by this time. I thought John David Booty would be a good pick that New England would do, because they like to pick late quarterbacks and see who could be a potential replacement for Tom Brady. Moving on to the AFC South, the Jaguars went with Golston and Ballmer, trading away Marcus Stroud for that pick. Wide receiver Lima Swede, Dexter Jackson, so 2 wide receivers there to help give him some options on offense. John Sullivan on the offensive line, Spencer Larson, Mike Humple, and Matt Sherry, the tight end of Villanueva. Houston Texans, again, I believe, got more explosive with this draft. Darren McFadden, the running back from Arkansas, along with Kendall Langford on defense, but Kenny Moore as a 5th round wide receiver. I think he's going to be a dark horse heading into this next season. There's Tavares Gooden, as well as Dominic Barber, 2 other defensive prospects picked by the Houston Texans. The Indianapolis Colts, their draft was very tame. They were one of the teams that had very low cap space. So they did not have as many free agents signed. They did sign Trent Green, the quarterback that's 38 years old from the Chiefs, to back up Peyton Manning since they had such a terrible time when he went down. One of the main reasons they missed the playoffs was because Manning got hurt, and Tim Couch, who they signed late, just could not pull it off. As you can see, they went with defense, Pat Sims, tight end Jacob Tamay, Tyvon Branch, Pierre Garçon, who was an original pick, along with Tamay, who were original picks. And then Jamar Adams as safety from Michigan. I figured he'd be a unique dark horse kind of safety pick for them. As for the division winner, the Titans, again, they went with Johnson. They lost Ben Troop in free agency to the Miami Dolphins and ended up picking up Fred Davis here in the 2nd round. Terrence Wheatley, cornerback. Brian Smith, left outside linebacker. Guion, defensive tackle. So they went with a lot of defensive picks here. Lex Hilliard, fullback, and then Josh Barrett, safety from Arizona State. Now, it's not very often you see Pittsburgh at the bottom of the draft for the AFC North, but they went with offensive tackle, ended up signing Cliff Averill, one of the better defensive studs. Red Bryant, the big guy from Texas A&M, who went to the Seahawks in the 4th round, but who was picked in the 3rd round here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Figured that they would go with someone with some more buff. Went with Matthew Slater, the wide receiver from UCLA, and then someone who I'm not going to pronounce his name, defensive back of Wisconsin. They did originally draft Dennis Dixon, so I decided that in the 6th round, Dennis Dixon was there, so they went with it. Also, he has a very similar play style to Aaron Brooks, who was the backup quarterback for the Steelers in this season. But Aaron Brooks, to re-sign him was way too expensive, so I decided, well, I'd rather just draft someone who has a similar play style and just move on from Aaron Brooks. And Aaron Brooks did decide to go back to the New Orleans Saints, a team he used to play for. And then Justin Forsett, the undrafted rookie that originally went to the Seahawks, is here picked by the Steelers. As we move to the Cincinnati Bengals, we see they went with Cedric Ellis, John Carlson, Kevin O'Connell, Philip Wheeler, Zachary Bowman, Nate Garner, Robert Henderson from Ole Miss. So they had a decent pickup there on their defense, as well as John Carlson, the tight end from the originally drafted by the Seahawks, but now in the arms of the Bengals. Cleveland Browns, their big picks were Harry Douglas, the wide receiver from Louisville, who will likely play a huge part in this Browns offense. I know the Browns will be going with Brady Quinn as opposed to Derek Anderson heading into this next season. And aside from Braylon Edwards, their receiving options were very low. Yes, they had Kellen Winslow and Edwards, but they needed that second receiver, and I think they got him with Harry Douglas. The original pick was the Falcons that got Douglas, but here we go with the Browns. Gary Barnidge, who did end up on the Cleveland Browns before, but he was originally drafted by the Panthers. The Browns get him a couple years earlier. Otaba Rubin, the DT of Iowa State, original pick by the Browns. But Rubin was picked, I think, in the 5th round in the original draft, but I just picked him earlier because I didn't see anyone better. Eric Walden, the left end, ended up going to Cleveland. Paul Hubbard, an original pick. And then the fullback Peyton Hillis, who was the cover on the Madden vote back in 2012. From Arkansas, he went to Denver in the real draft, but I decided to pick him earlier. I did up his stats a little bit to be more of a power running back. And then, of course, we have the Baltimore Ravens, Aqib Talib. They ended up picking Ray Rice like they did in real life, Will Franklin, Corey Lynch, Carlton Powell, and then Brian Johnston, the right end from Gardner-Webb. There it is, the draft. Thanks for watching this video and seeing where everyone went. I found this incredibly exciting and fun to do, being able to redo the entire draft of 2008 and just have a mix of reality as well as an alternate reality of where teams go and where people were picked. But again, there's a lot of exciting shifts and changes, so stay tuned for the upcoming season here for the 2008-2009 32-team franchise.